everyone, it's Keely here for Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for today's video where I'm going to share with you how I make my brand new magnesium lotion. Now if you're interested in getting your hands on this recipe, there are two different ways in which you can do it. This is the recipe that I have shared over on Patreon for the month of October 2022, and it is available on the $5 level up until the end of December 2022, and then it's available on the $10 level right up until the end of March 2023. When you join the $10 level, I do also give you some tweaks for this recipe as well. After that point, it's going to get moved into the vault. So if you're watching this video any later than that and you want to join Patreon for the recipe, you will need to join the vault. Now, if you don't want to join the vault, what I am starting to do is list all my past recipes over on the Pimp My Soap website where you can go and purchase it outright. When you purchase it outright, you'll get that recipe, plus you will get those tweaks that I share with my $10 patrons. Now with the recipe, it comes as both a recipe and a formula. So the formula is all in percentages, and then I've broken it down into a recipe for 100 grams and a 1 kilo batch. But having that formula number as well, or the percentages, you can change this into any batch size that you want to do. So if you are interested in getting those, I've left all those links down below in the description box. But for now, let's go and check out how I make my magnesium lotion. Let's go. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is measure out our water phase, and we're going to start by adding in our magnesium chloride. And it's so important to use magnesium chloride and not magnesium sulfate. They are two completely different salts, and you need the chloride in this particular recipe. Now this stuff is extremely hygroscopic, meaning that it will draw water into it and it will basically dissolve. So make sure that you reseal your bags well, squeezing out that air so that this doesn't turn to liquid. Next we're going to add in our water, and we're essentially making a magnesium oil at this point. And our humectant in here as well. Now that we've got everything in there, it is time to seal this jar up so that we don't have any water loss while we are heating it up. So now that we've got that all sealed up, there is a possibility that we will lose some water content out of this while it is heating up. So what I'm going to do is pop that onto my scales. I'm going to make a note of how much is in here. I will have a little pot of distilled water on the side boiling, so at the end when this has come up to temperature, we'll weigh how much is in here and we'll top it up if needed. Next is to do our phase B, or our oil phase, and this is going to contain our emulsifying waxes and the oils that we are going to be using. So our emulsifying waxes are in. I'm now going to add in my oils. If you are interested in this recipe, all of the ingredients that are in this recipe are listed on the Pimp My Soap website before you purchase it. There are all very basic, very easy to get ingredients. I tend to do that with my recipes so everyone has a chance of making it. And I do also give you a couple of alternatives that you could add into the recipe as well, so you can target different markets. So this particular one that I am doing, I have changed one of the oils just slightly, and it is one of the oils I do tell you about in the recipe as well, and it is accessible to most people, and if it isn't, you can always make it yourself. And finally, just to protect all of the oils that we've got in here, some natural vitamin E is going in too. Now that we've got everything weighed out, it is time to go and get these both into the water bath, and we're going to bring them up to a temperature of about 75 to 85 degrees before we look at combining them together. Okay, so we are up to temperature on both of these. The first thing we're going to do is weigh this one. Let's tear the scale out. Weigh this to see if we lost any water. And I've lost about 2 grams. So I'm really not bothered about 2 grams. It's not going to make much difference. If I'd lost, say, 10 grams, I would have added the 10 grams back in here. What we're going to do now, you can see with this one, it's got a slightly cloudy look to it, but all of that magnesium chloride has dissolved. What we're going to do is pour our oil phase into our water phase and give it a good mix with an immersion blender. Okay, so now that that has had a good mix, I'm going to let it sit here for 5 minutes just to rest. I am going to cover it up just to make sure we don't lose any water content out of this, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes time and we'll give it another mix with the immersion blender. So the lotion has been sitting here for a little while, cooling down. I gave it a few pulses with the immersion blender. So after the second time, I let it sit for another 15 minutes, and then I came back and I gave it another pulse until I was happy that everything was actually emulsified. And now I've actually let it cool down, so it should be between 30 and 40 degrees. Give it a stir so we can find out what the temperature is underneath. We're sitting about 34 degrees Celsius, and I do have a Fahrenheit thing on here, which is 93. So happy with how that is looking. Let's get our cool down phase in here. So for our cool down phase, onto our scales, we are going to add that all important preservative. So you want a water-based preservative, and I give you a couple of or water-soluble preservative, and I do give you a couple of options in the formula/recipe. So that is enough of that one, and I'm going to add a little essential oil blend to it as well, and I have left ideas for essential oil blends with the recipe. So let me get all this in here. So we've got everything in there. Let's give it a good mix. Now that that has had a really good mix, I'm going to cover it back up. It is still warm, so there is still the potential to lose some of the water content out of this. So keeping it covered, make sure that we don't lose any of this cream. I'm going to be putting mine into some tubes, and this is just way too hot to be putting it in tubes right now. So I'm going to leave this until it comes right down to room temperature, and then we're going to pot it up into some tubes. it is the next day, so I've left this one sit here overnight, and I do like to do that just to make sure this is the right temperature for potting up, but also to make sure that this doesn't split or do anything funny. And it is looking absolutely beautiful, smells really good as well. You can see we've got a nice thick consistency and yet still quite movable as well, so it's going to spread really nicely. Now this mix is thick enough that you can put it into jars if that's what you prefer. You could possibly put it into a pump bottle, but you may find that if you have it in too big a pump bottle, over time the lotion may clog the nozzle. I'm going to pop mine into tubes. Now I'm going to use my lotion filling machine to make this a bit easier. If you don't have a lotion filling machine, you can always put this into a piping bag and pipe it into tubes, bottles, and even jars. So let's get this into the lotion filling machine and get these filled up. Now I'm going to do some of my big ones. I'm also going to be running a bit of a promotion where I give some of these away to my customers, so I've got some smaller tubes and I'll be doing some little samples to send out as well. Okay, so now that I have got them all in their tubes, I have started to label them. I use an Epsom 3500 printer to do all of these, and I use Adobe Illustrator to do all the label design. I always start at the back, pulling it nice and tight to get rid of any air bubbles that might be in here, and keep wrapping it around. And there it is, our magnesium lotion is now all bottled up, ready to go over onto the shelf. I will be doing a second one of these, which will be a lavender based one, but just so you can have a look, I did have a little bit left over, so I've just kept a bit. With this cream, it does absorb into the skin, but I've also kind of designed it so that we'll end up with a bit of white rub when we're doing it, and this is really intentional. I did try and develop this to get rid of that white rub, and what I found is that once the cream rubbed on really easily, you weren't really concentrating on rubbing that cream in and kind of getting the blood flow going and getting all that goodness to get into those muscles and relieve them. So I left it with that white rub to make sure that people are spending that time just to massage it in, getting that magnesium to absorb into the skin. So don't be too alarmed if it has got a lot of white rub. It is very intentional on this product. Alright, so there it is. I have got two different variations of the magnesium lotion available on the shelf. As I said, this recipe and the tweaks are available to purchase on the Pimp My Soap website, or you can join Patreon if that's what you wish to do. Just make sure you double check those dates that I've got written down in the description box. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video, and until the next one comes out, I hope you have a good one, and I will see you then. Bye!